Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise, and we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer, dear listener, welcome yet again to another episode of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. It's always a privilege and an honor for me to bring you life-changing, impactful business education. And this time we have someone from the real estate field again. I have son of a good friend of mine, actually a mentor, son of Rajaram, and I call him Adyita Rajaram, son of Rajaram.
Thank you so much.
Okay, welcome to the studio. We're going to talk about your property business as well as few insights in that business and other businesses. But as always, I'd like you to share your background with the viewer. Tell them who you are and your educational background and your vocation.
Sure, thank you. Firstly, it's a great honor and privilege to be here. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast and for allowing me to really share some of my thoughts on entrepreneurship and my journey as well. I'm born here in Gaborone. Somebody told me, or actually my mom told me, that I was born in the corridors of Princess Marina on a very hot summer's day. Was born and brought up here in Gaborone, did till my high school here, and then for university. At that point in time, had a lot of passion already for the tourism.
Are you a Marapula guy?
I'm a map and Lehigh guy.
Oh, okay.
I'm a mix of both.
All right.
So I had a lot of passion for the hospitality industry. So I actually went and studied international hospitality management in Switzerland. I went to an incredible school called the École Hôtelière de Lausanne, one of the premier schools, and it was an incredible experience. I studied with people from 120 different nationalities. We became incredibly close. 4.5 years. Through the course of that 4.5 years, had the opportunity to go work in India for 6 months. I'm Indian ethnic, but I'm born and brought up here. This is home for me. So I had no idea what it's going to be like. So I said, let me go try it out. It's one of the most incredibly difficult places.
Which part of India?
I worked in a place called Bangalore. So I worked in a new hotel opening.
Yeah.
It was 20-hour work days, sometimes 7 days a week. And you learn a new meaning for hard work. And then I had a very good opportunity also to do another internship in Johannesburg, working for a real estate and hospitality consulting firm, which really opened my eyes up to a totally different world of consulting and information and data, which was incredible. Post that, I went and my first job was to work for a hotel company called Four Seasons.
An American company?
Yeah, it's a Canadian American company. They were reopening post the tsunami their hotels in the Maldives. So I went to help reopen those hotels.
Wow.
So a beautiful location, completely different from Botswana, right? We are landlocked and have no oceans or seas. They are sea locked, ocean locked, right? It was an island that was 2 kilometers by 500 meters wide, and my entire life there was for 7-8 months. And I loved the industry, but what I really realized is what my passion was for the built environment. My passion was for more the infrastructure around the hotel than necessarily what goes on inside the hotel. And my father.
In other words, you like to build rather than to manage.
Yeah, I loved the concept of the design, taking somebody's vision and the words that they're saying, this is how I'd love to operate, and then being able to say, okay, I'll take that and let me give you a space that's going to work for what you're trying to say, And then my father came to visit me at some point, and he saw that I was slowly going into island mentality, and I think it's one of those important things to have those those people in your life who are sometimes just going to press the reset button, and wake you up. And he said, there was an incredible opportunity back home. One of our businesses had the opportunity for rapid growth, but it required additional real estate. And he always knew, and we have a great relationship. We always knew about my passion for the real estate industry. And he said, do you want to come back and do you want to start a company that's going to run this development company for that company? And I said, yes, 100%, done. And it's an opportunity for me to come back home. I always knew I wanted to be here. This is where I'm most comfortable. It's where my family is, my friends are, it's where I've grown up. The food is familiar. There's so much about home that you can't change. You can't get anywhere else in the world. Anyway, came back home, started what was called Boto Park at the time. My first
Boto Park is the one that houses the university?
Correct. So Boto Park now obviously owns and manages, has developed various real estate over the course of the years. But my first project was the development of the Gaborone campus here at Boto University. I had an incredible team of architects and consultants who I worked with, but it was really about my understanding of how and listening to the educators about what they needed and how what the Boto model of education is. It's not large lecture theatres and the likes. It's smaller classrooms, high quality, the smaller lecture to student ratios and focus, exactly, and very practical. So the infrastructure had to allow for that practical side of education. It's not just tables and chairs, right? At that point in time, Boto University was very focused on computing and IT education. So the infrastructure in the building had to be tuned towards
the NI.
Exactly, just called NIIT,
yes.
or NEET, right? And then,
which stands for?
It was National Institute of Information Technology. I think that's where it was from. But NIIT is a global company. We obviously were the franchise for it here in Botswana. However, the education company took its own journey of having to diversify and move into other fields and other niche areas that the country needed, areas that they felt that they could service properly, right? And then it moved from being NIIT to Boto College, and then the goal was always to say, what is the gold standard in education is to become a university. So how do you take this, small training college to a university? And so that was a beautiful journey on the education side. But for that journey to be successful, part of it is real estate. And that's where I kind of plugged in my part of the puzzle piece.
Yeah, and indeed you run a company called Acumen Property Group, right?
Correct, yes.
Tell us about that name and also that company.
Oh, the name has a lot of meaning. But I just want what I did do is just to validate anybody who says you have no qualification in real estate is I went to Columbia University in New York. I did my master's there in real estate development. Again, learned an incredible amount because New York is the holy grail of real estate. Meaning, if there's something to learn about real estate, they've done it there, right?
True.
So I have a lot of good mentors and connections from back then as well, which it's inspired me to do some of the stuff that I'm actually involved with today.
What, a year, 2 years?
Yeah, it was a 1-year master's.
Oh, okay.
A 1-year master's in New York. Luckily, no COVID, so no online learning. It was physical learning.
Yeah, those days. Yeah.
Those days, exactly. But I could bring those learnings and bring it back home, right? And trying to implement some of those learnings here with what I do. Sustainability, affordable housing, developing, real estate that is functional but not necessarily expensive, right? And that's something sometimes I think we lose out as an industry, is we try to make the most beautiful buildings, but functionally they're not very functional, and then they lose out long term. But yeah, where does Acumen Property come? So Acumen was the name of my father's. My father is a chartered accountant by profession.
Yeah, your father, by the way, mentored me in the early days. He's the one who encouraged me to open my own business. I was at Minchin and Kelly at the time, and I used to do work for him.
Okay.
And was getting a little despondent and confused, and I told him that I'm thinking of, jumping off, and he encouraged me to jump off, and for that I will be forever grateful. Please let him know that
I will do. And it's so heartening to hear these stories. But the reality is, yes, I think both my parents were incredible mentors. incredible role models, and that was very important for me in my entrepreneurial journey, because they at a very young age cultivated some, real, to use your words, nuggets, in me about how one should operate one's business, and what your relationship is with your business, really.
Still on that point, let me just get to the heart of what we're going to discuss.
Yeah.
You're not your business, you and your business are not one and the same.
Exactly.
Can you speak to that point? Because I think that's a very important subject to cover.
Absolutely. I mean, it was one of those concepts that he taught me very clearly. I mean, I remember I was about 15 years old. I had an interest already in business and finding out what was going on and what was happening within the businesses that we operate as well. And he said, listen, one of these key importance is you and your business are a different entity. You're connected, but you're different, right? You don't have the same bank account. The funds which are in the business are not your money, right? The business has to survive and you have to survive. Yes, you are linked, obviously, because you're operating the business, but the business has to live also, right? It's got to be able to function and go onward. So the whole concept that you are not the same, right? When the business makes revenue, it's not your revenue, it's the business's revenue.
That's a very good point, because even in law, especially in America, they warn against commingling.
Exactly.
The idea of having your personal affairs commingled with the business affairs.
Absolutely.
In fact, legally, it can be a danger where you're exposing yourself to litigation if you commingle, because it means you're personally liable. You treat the business basically as one and the same.
I think it speaks to another point, is that how you operate your business or how much discipline you have towards your business is what your employees, your partners, even your family look at that business. I have an example of a person who's running a butchery, right? It was a fairly successful butchery. I mean, and the issue was that occasionally he used to, when he needed additional things, he used to put his hand in the cookie jar, right, into the till registry. And he would account for it, he knew what it would do. But then what happened is, some of his own family members saw the same thing happening, and so the son thought, I need to get something, let me just do what my dad did, right? And it becomes you got to set the trend for your business.
Yeah.
You've got to direction your business in the way that it needs to go. If you don't have the discipline, then how can you expect either your partners or your others who are involved in the business to have it?
But don't you see a problem here, Adyita, in Botswana especially, where banks, financial institutions insist on personal suretyships, where banks here don't necessarily respect, independence of a company or the separate identity of a company. They make you sign personal suretyships, you're personally liable, you end up bonding your house and you're exposed.
And I think in some ways, I hear you, and I can some ways understand it from the bank's perspectives, right? When these companies are far larger, right, listed entities and the likes, where the separation is greater between the entity and the founder or the business owner or the shareholder, these things kind of fall off. But in the early days, for the business to operate, it is essential for that person to be disciplined as well, right? I mean, the way you run your life, the reputation you have for yourself is the reputation your business has. Similarly, the reputation your business has is your reputation. So if you're seen as somebody who's frivolous and open and all over the place, people are going to see, maybe this business he's running that business, or she's running this business. Maybe this is the way it's going to be, and I think for banks that is a way of securing, to ensure that you operate the business seriously as the owner, because their bond is literally, their collateral is the business, and if the business fails, there's only a few reasons for it. Either it was the market, which means you didn't operate it correctly, or it could be the founder and the owners themselves. Maybe they kept funneling money out of the business to profit themselves, and so it's a way for the banks to secure themselves. Now I personally feel, in an entrepreneur's journey, obviously there's you've been through it, Mogobe, looking at it right from seed, startup stage, and then growing the business to where it becomes something that's scaled and is successful and has a certain amount of recurring income and all these other nice terms that exist. Banks ease up. Yes, in Botswana, this personal guarantee is something that even exists among big businesses. But the minute you go beyond, as I said, and you become, let's say, a listed entity, those things start to drop off. Or you find other forms of financing, right, which is not necessarily bank financing. It could be pension fund money, or it could be venture capital money. And then the triggers or their collateral is different from a personal guarantee, because it's less about you and it's more about the business.
Let's talk about what's in the best interest of the company or the business. And obviously you have to address this from the background of Acumen business, the Acumen property business. How do you identify what's in the best interest of the company, and how do you keep that at the forefront of your mind as a business person?
It's another concept that I learned very early on, that when you take a decision for the business, always ask yourself, is this in the best interest of the business? I'm going to take an expensive office space in a central location. Not that I have anything wrong with it, but it's something you need to ask. Is it in the best interest of the business? Can the business afford it? Yes. From a personal perspective, I've got a great office in a A-grade office space. The ego element, as an owner, you feel fantastic. Or I've bought an expensive vehicle, and I can drive this vehicle around. My family feels great.
Range Rovers.
Exactly. However, is that in the best interest of the business, right? Because if it's a business who's financing that for you, then the business has the right, and that's why I always talk about the business as a different person, right? The business has the right to ask, is this the best thing for me? You going and buying an expensive car for yourself, what does it mean for the business? Does it mean the business is going to grow more? Or you going into an expensive office space, does it mean that it's, I'm going to get more business? Does the profile of the business increase? And thus, because the profile is better, or I've asked this to a couple of companies I've mentored, is why do you have offices? You are in a kind of business that doesn't necessarily need an office in an expensive space. You could be in a house, or let's say in a different market, let's say a sub-market. Instead of being in CBD, you could be in Kale, or you could be in Paklani or somewhere else. And the response I got from that one company was, actually, for our old business, we have two businesses. There's a new business we run and an old business. The old business requires walk-ins, and it's high-end walk-ins. And so for me to have my offices here ensures that those clients that I deal with, which are mainly corporates, it's easy for them to access me, right? And then I asked them the question, what about now post-COVID? And post everybody realizing that there is a whole online world of work, and this, remote working and the likes. Is it still necessary? And it's something that's got them thinking. Is it really necessary? Do I need to keep paying that X amount for rental when I could be paying half of X every month, and thus there's more revenue, there's more bottom line, right? There's more profit at the end of the day.
Well, just to digress a little bit, you talked about mentoring, and you and I are part of the Angel Network Botswana.
Absolutely.
Can you just share a little bit about that organization and help the viewer watching understand what mentoring is available out there?
Of course. So Angel Network Botswana is a business angel network. So what is a business angel? A business angel is a person with some form of liquid funds who wants to invest it into other people's businesses, into either startups or seed companies, but not just invest their capital, but invest their time, invest their networks, and overall is really looking for more than just profit. So for instance, for my sake, why did I join Angel Network Botswana is I have a strong passion in developing a thriving ecosystem of entrepreneurs and innovators in the country.
Same here.
I would love to see Botswana developing, the next big tech startups on the continent, and it's possible. Botswana has the possibility, and it's going to happen, right? There are already young entrepreneurs out there with great ideas, novel ideas, right? Or ideas which are better than what they're existing on the continent. But what they're lacking is sometimes the assistance with how to get from A to B, You know, the connection to that next person, the connection into a bank, the funds to get there, or sometimes, you know, the kickstart to say, what about this? What about this vision? What about this strategy? Why are you not considering moving to Zambia? Why don't you open, you know, go and do the same thing you're doing in a big market, do it in Kenya, compete with South Africans. There's nothing wrong with competition, because competition is like a sharp stone on a rock. It really helps it make you really sharp and efficient.
It sharpens you, yes.
Exactly. And I think if that's the role that, you know, as a privileged member of society, as somebody who's been able to get a great education, you know, run a successful business, come from a comfortable, successful family that allowed me to mature. If this is the way I can give back, and this is the way that I can assist my country to grow, I'm very passionate.
Absolutely,
you know,
absolutely. I want us to talk about cash and cash flow management, and I think
something very close to my heart.
Yeah, something very close to your heart, and something that is really might be different for a property management company or a property development company. So I want you to address it in the context of what Acumen Property Company is doing.
Yeah, I'll do that, and I think it comes from my father being a chartered accountant. You know, while I'm not a chartered accountant, you know, accounting and finance has been something that's kind of like been pumped into our blood from a very young age, and the importance for cash, knowing your cash, and planning.
Cash flow management.
And planning, right, and managing your cash, exactly. You know, from a property angle, you know, the property business is there's a huge cash flow out in the beginning, right, and it's a long-term game, right? It's a long-term business. You're involved in the real estate business, and real estate business isn't something that you look to make your wealth in 2 years or 3 years. You're looking to make your wealth in 10 or 15 or 20 years. So it's a long period of time that you've got to be able to manage the money, right? So you get either debt financing, or if you're lucky enough to have, you know, a large amount of equity, you put that into a piece of real estate. But now how do you reap that reward? You rent the business, or you may sell it, right? So selling is slightly more short term, but rental is a long term game, right?
I happen to believe in buy and hold as opposed to flipping.
Correct. So you know,
they call it flipping when you buy then you sell.
And it's speculative. And speculative in any form is short term for me.
Yeah.
Because speculation means there's some arbitrage in the market, and it's short term usually. And so you've seen a gap, and you say, okay, let me buy this, let me sell it, and I'll make a little bit. But what is wealth? Wealth is long term, right? So wealth creation is a long term business, and real estate is a metric to develop wealth anywhere in the world. Most business people have some form of real estate investment, right?
I'm biased, but I think it's the best system.
I have a lot of bias towards it as well, and I think you and I, share a lot when it comes to that. But let's take it back to your question on where does cash flow management fall in the real estate business?
Yes.
For me, it falls in because it's long term. Because you're putting in a lot of capital in the beginning, and you want your return to come as soon as possible. Now, if you don't manage your cash properly, what happens? You could have 5 years of great time, then COVID could hit, right? And what does COVID do? Suddenly your tenant comes back and says, business is really tough. I think I'm going to give you notice. Now, if you haven't managed your cash properly, and you don't know your position, your cash position, you may not have the ability to tell him, actually, why don't we try and help each other out? I'll give you a concession on rentals, right? So your business is going to be tough for the next 1 year. I'll give you a 50% concession, but come 1 year later, over the next 1 year, you pay me 1.5 times. So we've helped each other out.
Yes.
And the reason I was able to make such decisions is because I know the cash I have right now will still allow me to pay the bank, right? Because I've taken debt financing to finance. So I can still pay the bank back. I can still pay my salaries. I can still pay all my costs with the reserves that I've built up over the years. But I haven't lost a tenant, because one of the big fears in real estate is once you've lost a tenant is replacing the tenant, especially in a down market like we're in right now.
Because you want to avoid vacancies as much as possible.
And what does vacancies do as well to a building? You know, it's like a working motor. You know, when you leave a car parked in a garage for 3 years, when you go to restart that car, what happens? It doesn't start, right? Because it's rusted and there's maintenance to be done. And it's a similar thing with real estate. I mean, I believe, you know, real estate is almost like a living thing, right? You got to keep pumping blood within it for it to survive, right? Otherwise, it just becomes overgrown and it becomes like one of those things you see in the movies where there's vines growing all over it, right?
True.
And so I think cash flow management, even non-real estate businesses, is critical, especially in early stages.
What do you say to people who believe in negative gearing and reverse mortgages, all kinds of systems where the cash flow is negative at the beginning?
You know, it's a very, for me, it's a very new concept to Africa. I think it's a concept that exists in some other parts. You know, they call it a burn rate sometimes. You know, how much cash are you burning through? You know, so you've created a platform that can create a business that's about 400 times bigger than what it is right now. But to be able to get there, you've got to spend a lot of money, right? So investors come on board to fund your burn to allow you to get to profitability. It's a very tough concept.
Me, I'm almost violently opposed to the idea. Maybe guess it's my generation. I don't know.
I know, and I would say I fall in between. My traditional mindset, my real estate mindset, always is about a positive cash flow, right?
From day one.
From day one, and the reason is, if you're not having that positive cash flow, then you know you're always kind of behind the game, right? You're always fighting. You're always fighting to prove yourself. And when you have debt and your personal, you know, guarantees related to that debt,
personal suretyship,
what does that mean? It means when that business fails, you lose everything, and you got to kind of restart, right? So, and that's from a more conservative kind of mindset. However, for young startups, for young people who don't have that much to lose, right? But what do they have? They have an idea, they have energy, and they have passion, right? And they may have knowledge. They should have knowledge in that area, right? So when they have these 4 things, which let's say a traditional older person may not have anymore, may not have as much of, the older person may say, all right, let me fund this person with some equity, right? Because I'll own a portion of their business and let them burn that equity. But what it'll allow is for that idea to become a business. And now suddenly I own a business, right? I mean, they said Amazon and many of these other companies.
Yeah, they were unprofitable.
They were unprofitable for years. But it was the idea, the concept of it was so huge that it was so attractive for
and they kept growing
funders.
despite the unprofitability.
Exactly, and that's what they show, right? Is that they're showing top line growth. This whole concept of top line growth, right? I mean, I love to look at the bottom line. Okay, but I've learned over the years that you got to look at both.
Does that concept translate easily in the real estate market?
No, not really. I would, because real estate is still very hands-on. Those kind of things really work in businesses that can scale very quickly.
Like
tech-based businesses, you know, businesses which target the bottom of the pyramid, right? Where you can suddenly reach scale and thus drop costs very quickly, right? The issue with real estate is real estate has huge upfront cost, and every project has huge upfront cost. It's not like you can make a product, a cookie, and then just keep cutting with that cookie again and again, right? You've got to keep building the cookie every single time.
Okay, let's push our conversation forward to understanding the purpose of your business, knowing what your really long-term game is.
Yeah.
I still have to draw you back to real estate because that's your area of expertise. What are you encouraging the youngsters to do on that point?
So coming to that point of know what your business is here for, right, is what I've seen in my short experience with mentoring and even with myself and my businesses is that when you look at your business, if you're not sure why your business exists, somewhere along the line you may either lose passion for it and start doing something else, which means all that effort you put into it was for not much. Or your employees don't see the same reason for why you exist, right? Unless you're not able to build a strong team. You're not able to take your business from, let's say, a small startup SME size something to something slightly more substantial. And the reason, you know, is your business there? Because like, for instance, you know, when I had an interaction with somebody, they're in the they make consumer products. They're actually in the jam business, right? And he says, no, like, I'm happy with the size of my business. And the problem is sometimes as mentors we want to tell them where things should go, but the truth
We're
is,
always thinking scale, growth. That's
but
what we always say.
the entrepreneur themselves has to come up with that. It's their business at the end of the day. It's not our business, right? And he says, no, I'm quite happy with the size of my business. I'm able to produce a quality thing, and I'm able to make a living. So for him, his purpose of the business is not that he was passionate about this. He knew how to make jams. He knew he could find some local products. But for him, it was really about, I want to have something that keeps me busy and gives me some income so that I can live my life, right? For me, that's not necessarily an entrepreneurial business. And I don't want to put anybody off. I'm not saying they're not entrepreneurs, but that mindset is more about the self than the business, right?
Yeah, because you have the view, which I share, that there's no such thing as stagnation, because once you stagnate, you stick to one place, you're actually regressing.
Exactly.
So it's very important because of the dynamics of the economy and the dynamics of business, you have to be growing in one way or the other. If there's no growth, there's regression. That's what I believe. I don't know what you think.
I absolutely agree. And here's the other thing, right? So let's take that same jam guy's example.
Yeah.
He was happy with where he was. As in, he was happy in his own life being there, and was not a very large business. And that's okay, it's good for him. However, say the person had a dream of, I want to have a life where I can send my children to any university I choose. Right? That's my dream.
Yeah.
So that means he needs to have a certain amount of income to be able to get to that stage, right?
Yes.
Which means he has to grow his business to that stage. So suddenly his growth is linked to his business's growth.
True.
Right? You'll find other people who say, listen, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to, there's a gap in the market. The people aren't getting enough of what they should be. I want to change the world, right? Some people call them social enterprises, right? Social enterprises where it's a business, but it's a business with a reason why it wants to change the world. I mean, I even call, to a certain extent, the education business or the hospital business a social business, because what you're doing is you're delivering a service to the nation, right? That delivers future, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a different motivation. And when you have such a motivation, sometimes your staff are willing to take a lower pay or harder work because what you're trying to achieve is greater than themselves, right?
So they buy into the bigger vision.
Exactly. So if you know what you're doing your business for, you're able to transfer that to your partners or your employees, and even back to your family. And I really come back to the it's about you, right? You and your business.
Yeah.
You're not alone. There is a family behind you. And sometimes what you find is the family kind of eats away at you. Say, I want this. Can you buy this? Can you do that? And then suddenly you're going to take out of the business.
They think you're an ATM.
Exactly. And so you've got to be able to sell your vision to everybody who's connected to that business, because it comes back to the point we made earlier. What's in the best interest of the business?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I want you to talk briefly about the real estate market now and how it's been affected by COVID. I mean, I'm looking at the various facets of real estate: commercial, industrial, multi-residential, and residential. What did you say the impact is, and what are you as Acumen doing to weather the storm?
It's I think every sector's varied, and I think we're still seeing this play out. I still think there's a lot to come on. I mean, we've heard this month about the curfew and the curtailment of certain businesses like the liquor industry and the impact that's had on them. So obviously that'll have a downstream impact.
That on restaurants.
Exactly.
Me, I've been hammered especially for that.
So, I would say let's start with residential, especially multi-residential. I would say, affordable multi-residential has still been quite strong, and the reason is, while people haven't lost their jobs, right? Because of the government's intervention, people still have jobs, and for those businesses that have been able to operate, let's say, work from home and the likes, people are still making an income. The other truth is, for those who are making more, suddenly they want a more affordable option. So I'd say the affordable multi-residential sector has been quite strong. from our perspectives, our vacancy rates have been actually quite low on that sector, right? Now you take it to the next sector where you got like small houses, homes, your middle income kind of housing. I think there's been a lot of variance, right? I mean, we've had to do concessions or discounts in rentals, really work with our tenants.
I found I had to waive the escalations.
Exactly. No, and I think that's across the board. I think escalations those who are escalating, I would really say that there is a chance that they may lose their tenants because economy hasn't grown, right? Economy hasn't grown. People are not making more money. If anything, they're making less money. So how are you going to increase their costs, right? And I think for real estate, for us as owners or managers or whatever role we've played, it's important that we see the tenant's side of things as much as we see our side of things. Because, especially in a market like today, because when those tenants are going through a tough time, if you are there to assist them, I believe, even in today's world, it comes back to assist you later on. Because of what I said earlier, real estate is a long-term game.
Yeah.
It's not about the 1 or 2 years that COVID has a direct impact on the economy. I think COVID's impact will be there a lot longer, but it will not be as much as time progresses.
You think is any different when it comes to industrial and commercial?
On the commercial side, from our side, what we saw is we had to give serious concessions during those 3-4 months, of lockdown, open lockdown, that period.
Yes.
To assist businesses that literally lost revenue, got revenue, less revenue, and they had to kind of break their curve. And the easiest way for them to have sustained it was to do this. And what we did is we broke it into 2 sides. We gave discounts, and then we gave something called concessions. So concessions are where they still owe us, but they don't have to pay us today. We help them with their cash flow, right? We help them with their cash flow.
In other words, you push it to the bank, like the banks more or less did, to say, we waive the repayments for these 3 months, but we add them to the back end.
At the back end.
Yeah.
So we said, if we as the real estate industry have been given that benefit, right, of let's say moving cash flow to a later, delaying cash flow to a later time, if we can assist our tenants where necessary to do the same, it builds a much stronger relationship between tenant and landlord. And I will say that our other experience that we've seen from others is those who've lost tenants have found it very difficult to find new tenants. And the reason being is how many new businesses are getting generated in today's market?
Very few,
Very
if
few.
anything, yeah.
And so I think that's where the commercial real estate has been impacted. I think rentals rates have been reduced while maybe published rates are similar. I think behind there has been some discounting and some concessions given to tenants, waivers, right? No escalations, those kind of things. And some increase in vacancy rates, especially in higher end, this one. I will say in the commercial side, on the affordable side, there's also been a big impact. And the reason is these young businesses that didn't have reserves to get over COVID, they died. These businesses are finished, unfortunately. Small bakery companies, small businesses that were, small IT companies that were giving service to people, unless they pivoted their businesses, made their businesses different, they suddenly couldn't pay rent. And they'd rather than operate from their garage or their house, than operate. And I'll be honest, I think that's the case even for some bigger corporates who suddenly lost out. They're moving out of areas like the CBD into smaller areas because they're just saying, we want to be cautious. On the industrial side, I think manufacturing and those things, if they were health related, continue to do fine.
To do well,
Right. I would say there was still a demand for construction goods and the likes, right? So their issues was lockdowns. So they got impacted during lockdown. Curfews don't impact them. Curfews still allow those businesses to operate, but just for a shorter period.
The lockdown is far more devastating than the curfew.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because for those physical businesses that require people to be on site, like manufacturing, lockdowns means shutdown. Right? And restart sometimes of equipment is very expensive.
We found with the restaurant business that it takes us roughly 6 weeks to 2 months to recover, to get back to where we were after a lockdown or even after an extended curfew like this. All right, let's take it the discussion a little further. And thanks for that lovely answer, by the
No
way.
problem.
Because sometimes I ask for even myself. It's very helpful. Looking at the interests of the investors
Yeah.
or other role players, angels, you said it's very important to keep that in mind. What is your take on that?
I think my point on this is that it's important right from the onset. Whoever may be giving you money at the beginning, could be your mother, could be your uncle, could be your cousin, right? Who's helping you start up your business. It's important you set right in the beginning, what does that investment mean? Does it mean that the person is now an investor in your business? Or does it mean that the person is it's debt and you will pay them back with some form of interest, right? Or is it a grant, right? Maybe sometimes your parents will give you money and they'll say, no, I don't want it back. You do it, right? And it's important you understand that how that money came into your business. And if possible, it's very difficult, especially with family and friends, to put it down in writing. Because what happens is, say you take a figure as small as 5,000 pula from somebody you know at the beginning, and 2-3 years down the line, your business has become successful in that you are earning, you're cash positive, you're earning some money. The person can see that you bought a new pair of shoes, and then they come and say, "But I'm a partner in your business. Where's my 50% of the profits?
Where's my stake? Yeah.
Where's my stake?" And you're like, no. I thought I'm just have to pay you back, and I'm actually got my money for you. I'm going to pay you back. I'm a partner in your business, and then it creates conflict.
Is this a problem you've encountered with some of the businesses you're encountering?
It's a problem I've seen with some of the young businesses that I've worked with, where let's say it's a group of young graduates who've got together, right? I mean, another one of my hats is my office actually is in both universities, so I deal with young graduates and young people consistently. Is they get together, they have a wonderful idea. They've got different areas of expertise, and they've got that young passion and drive and energy, and they go forward to do it. And then somewhere along the line, one of the partners sours, and the whole business collapses. Something that should have succeeded, because they didn't have an understanding with each other.
The personality clash or something?
Either personality clash, or somebody suddenly, somebody has a different priority in their life. Maybe one of them gets married, right? And needs money from the business, but the business needs the money, right? And so then it becomes a conflict and the partnership falls.
So putting it in writing at the beginning helps.
Correct. Get your understanding down. If you're taking money from somebody, ask them, is this a loan, or are you looking to invest into my business, right? And get it written down, and you need to accept it. So if somebody says, yeah, I'll give it to you, and I want 50% of your business, do you want to give away 50% of your business, right? So these are all, and even if it's an angel, right, which will be a slightly later stage, maybe you're raising 100, 200, 500,000, 1 million pula. Understand why are they coming into your business.
Well, if it's an angel worth his salt, you'll make sure that it's in writing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
for their sake.
Yeah, for their sake.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you won't be an angel from our organization. I'm sure about that. Let's talk about reputation and how businesses need to be aware of the impact of their actions, reputationally speaking.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, I have a very hard line on integrity, right? If you're going to run a business that is involved in practices that impact your conscience, right? So it could be really bad things like corruption, bribery, graft, those kind of things, or it's paybacks. These are, people call them soft corruption. Where you give a guy business, and if he gives you the business, you pay them a little bit extra. You give them something back on the business. That is still a form of incentivization or corruption, right? And it can come back to haunt you. And now that's in the business, right? Because long term, there will be those who want to deal with your business, but if your business has a reputation of dealing like that, people, like for instance, I will not deal with a contractor who has a history of paybacks. I'll say, I don't want to deal with you. Because I don't know what you're going to be trying to do behind my back with my own guys. Right? I need to be able to trust you, and you have to be able to trust me.
One day it comes back to bite you, to haunt you. Yeah.
Similarly, your personal self, if you have a reputation as being somebody who is indisciplined or loose with money, and say an investor now is looking at your business, the investor is going to be like, he has a good business, this guy spends a lot of money, or this lady spends a lot of money. And the business, I don't think, can afford this for long. What if the business goes into trouble? Will they be able to go back to a simple lifestyle?
So in other words, you can't make a good business with a bad business plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, character is very important.
Character is very important.
And do you see that being a big problem in Botswana?
I would say there is a feeling among some, I don't want to say all, but some, you want to make the money fast, right? So you see a successful business person, you see the car they're driving, and you say, I want to get there today. It didn't take a month, 2 months, or a year for that person to reach where they are. It took a lot of hard work, it took a lot of effort, risk, whatever it may have been, to get to where they are. And so then some people do want to try and shortcut the system. It's a loosely used word, and I don't think all of them are bad people, but the tenderpreneurs, right? Those who will do things which we see in the newspapers, right? To be able to get a contract, because it gives them that quick money. I think that there is a problem there,
and what people should realize that these businesses never really last. They are never long-term sustainable.
Exactly, because how long can you keep doing it? How long do you keep doing it until you get caught? How long do you keep doing it until your own conscience says, I can't do these things? Or the person you did it to comes to bite you back. To say, I scratched your back the other day. Now when are you going to scratch mine?
If you don't do this, I'm going to do this. Yeah, let's talk
it's not
about
worth it.
The idea for the business to move, there has to be commitment. The idea of commitment to the hustle. Being committed to the hustle. I want you to speak to that, but giving examples from your own situation, your own business.
I think, it's something that I've noticed even in our business, is that the real estate business, I would say from about 2006 to about 2012 was non-stop, right? It was like a roller coaster, right? And it was an incredible ride, consistent development, consistently, new business coming on board, and new markets, looking at even outside of Botswana, looking at so many things. It was very exciting. And post that period of success, you'd reached a certain level of comfort.
Which period is that up to?
I'm saying till about 2012, right?
Yes.
So in my personal business, till 2012, I reached a stage where, the business reached a great period. You'd grown the business by almost more than 10 times, right? You feel like you've done something successful, and you may sit back. But when you sit back, your business does the same thing. Unless you have developed a solid team in your business who are now operating a business. And let's be honest, in young entrepreneurial businesses, the role of the founder and the leader is still critical towards the growth and direction of the business, right?
That is a challenge. How do you really inculcate that spirit into your team? In other words, how do you more or less duplicate or replicate yourself in your team?
I think delegation is an art, and you can give somebody the work, and they have no idea how to do it, or you can delegate the work and mentor and coach them to do it, right? And it also comes back to what we spoke earlier about the passion, about the vision, about the dream, right? So if the people you're working with have bought into what you're trying to get, where you're trying to go, when you hand over something to them, they willingly will take it. My point always was, people who come forward saying, I want a promotion. Says, what does a promotion mean? Promotion means you're ready to take on more responsibility and take off responsibility from either your supervisor, or if it's somebody reporting to me, take responsibility off from me so I can do something else. Because a promotion isn't just about a title. A promotion is about responsibility and work and deliverables, right? And when suddenly people want to take on that additional responsibility, because for them that means I am getting a promotion, right? And it's all about, for me it's coaching / mentoring the person, sharing the passion and the vision, because if you don't share your passion and vision, the person doesn't know why I'm doing it, right? And ultimately it's also about trust. The person who you're giving it to has to feel like you are trusting them to do it. If you're going to stand over them and correct them with every mistake they make, right, then either they will never learn from their mistakes, or they'll just say, why don't you just do it instead?
Okay. And this next point, I've lived it. In the beginning, you are everything. You are the messenger, you are the driver. You know, it's not going to be like that for very long. Let's discuss the transition.
It's important to realize in the beginning you are going to be that. You know, I've seen guys, set up four people set up a business together. One will be the CEO, one will be the CFO. They give themselves titles, right? But the reality is, in the beginning, if you have, say, a group of 4 founders, you are all doing everything. If somebody is sick and not able to do it, you should do it, right? And a title doesn't mean anything in the beginning of business, because in the beginning, it's about getting that business to success, but getting to that business to a positive cash flow and seeing what is the next area of growth and scale. But then there is the next stage, this transition you talk about.
Yeah.
The transition from when you are now everything to you've built a team, you've built a business, and you have the option or the choice. And it takes a long time to get there, to say what is it you want to be. Are you comfortable being the leader, the person setting the tone, or is one of your partners better suited to that? Or are you the guy who's better at doing things, right? He's the person who likes to get it. Like in a tech company, he's the programmer.
So how did Acumen handle that specifically?
I think from my perspective, I always wanted to be the leader. So it was fairly easy, right? I think in the beginning I did everything, right? I was the site supervisor, I was part of the design team, I was choosing the contractors, I was negotiating the contract sums, I was looking at maintenance within the buildings, everything. I dealt hands-on with the contractors and the subcontractors. I used to even, to some extent do the accounts, right? And so for me, what it was is, when I was doing all of that, I didn't get time. I didn't get time to think, right? And as an entrepreneur, I think it's important that you do find contemplation time, periods of time where you leave all the issues and problems in the world and you think of, what is it that I want? Where do I want my business to go, right? What is the next thing for this business, right? Why is my business successful? These are great questions to ask oneself, because through answering it, you kind of build your vision and your mission, your strategy, and all these other nice things which are there to have. And when I realized I didn't have the time for it, that's when I started building this team. It's very, I'll be honest, for me it was very difficult to let go, because I felt if I did it, I knew how I did it right.
Delegation can be hard.
It can be. And delegation comes from the person showing trust in you and you showing trust in the person. And as I found people that I could trust, I started giving them the room to do it. There were mistakes. I'll be very honest. There were times and big arguments. There's a couple of guys who work for me who've been working. We were working together for a very long time. And if you ask them, there'll be times they say, Aditya can get really upset. But I think I learned from those periods of upset that sometimes there's no point getting upset. Rather, mentor and coach the person to do it right. Tell them what was wrong, what could have been done better, what you would have done in their situation, and understand why they did what they did, right?
Okay. For those who might not know, how does the portfolio look like now beyond just the university at Boto?
We've got a sizable multi-residential sector. And it's one of my passions.
Is it apartments?
Apartments, yeah. I would say affordable housing, mainly affordable housing.
Whereabouts?
In Moholisane, in Tokweng, in town. Some of the older units are in town, and and in Francistown. So it's a mix of these.
So these are two bed, two.
Correct. So some 1 bed, some 2 beds, some 3 beds. Not more than 3 beds. I find more than 3 beds, you're in a different market.
Yes.
And the 3 beds are also because we saw that there were some young families who could afford a higher rental, but were finding themselves cramped up in a 2 bed. And if you offer that extra 1 bedroom, suddenly they're willing to pay that 2,000 or 3,000 pula extra, as long as you're giving them a good product. I'm very passionate about affordable housing, because I think building fancy housing is great, but there's a lot of people who can't find good housing, good quality housing within the confines. And if you're able to densify a plot, you're able to bring down that cost of the land.
I like that word, densify.
Yeah, and
to get the highest, best use.
Exactly. I would say, our land laws do have some way to allow for more densification, but I would say it's found a fine line between developing, issues like such cities like Hong Kong have, where there's too many people for the area that they're in, and the congestion becomes crazy, right? And I think sometimes some of the stuff we have in Gabs, where you have almost a sprawl, right? And government now is battling to continuously fight behind to provide services to the areas where the city is building.
So that's multi-residential.
So multi-residential, we have a few commercial buildings, some of which much older. I think the oldest commercial building we have is 21 years. It's been in the portfolio.
Which one is that? I know all the buildings in that.
It's Acumen Park, where Grant Thornton is.
Oh yes,
so
I know it,
So that building is one of our oldest commercial buildings. We do have a couple of other commercial buildings in Finance Park and in other areas of town. I think in some ways we've built quite a nice our institutional real estate portfolio. Whether it's higher education with both university and IDM.
Yeah, I noticed that you have an interest in most of you're more or less your own tenant in some of these.
It's some of them, right? But like for instance,
in other words, you have an interest in the companies that
But
occupy.
like for instance, Francistown is not occupied by one of our companies. It's fully occupied by externals, right? And we have a good relationship with our tenants. We understand their business, so that we're able to give them real estate which performs. Similarly, we're now we're building a new secondary school. And that's
whereabouts?
In Block 7. It's called Enkoboto.
Oh yes,
it's the name.
My daughter goes there.
Oh wow, amazing!
yeah.
So, different pockets of real estate. I think Block 7 is very exciting. It's a very large plot and there's a lot of room for development. We do have other options and land that we own in different parts of the country, and I think for us to keep growing in areas that we have strength in, we're not trying to compete with the listed entities. They have very different, return targets to what we do. We have our shareholders, and we want to give them shareholder value. Our investors.
So listing is not something you ever contemplate.
I wouldn't say it's something we would ever contemplate. I would never take it that far. But I wouldn't say it's the aim and that's what we're going to build a portfolio for. We're building a portfolio for long-term returns, for wealth generation, for wealth creation.
Okay. Are you willing to say how many units you got? You're managing now?
I know it's a portfolio of more than 150 units.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. And obviously that's just residential. So.
Plan for peaks and troughs. I feel like we covered this indirectly when we talked about
cash flow as
about cash flow and about COVID, but I think you said it's important to actually anticipate troughs.
Yeah.
There's a tendency to plan just for the good times.
I think it's good to anticipate for both, right? So peaks for me is suddenly there's an opportunity, you need to offload capital now, and then within 6 months you're gonna through and sometimes that happens, right? You will get so let's take the real estate business. You meet a person that you know who's a corporate, and that corporate comes and says, I'm really unhappy with where my offices are right now. Would you be able to develop an office park for me? That requires capital. If you have spent all the profits that you've made and you don't have the capital to say yes to go and buy the land and develop, you lose that opportunity.
And a huge opportunity.
It's a huge opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to build a 60, 70, 100 million pooler asset that is going to give you 10, 11%, right, for the next 10, 15 years. And then suddenly that's your asset, right? You've developed 100 million pooler worth of real estate. That is, think of that wealth, right? I mean, how long does it take a business to get that, right? Some businesses it takes a long time. Others it takes a very short time because they're in this tech business that can, suddenly be 0 to 100 in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Similarly, you plan for tough times. So, for instance, I would say, like, real estate in the last 2 years has taken a beating in commercial real estate and rentals and the likes, right?
A huge beating.
Hospitality, catering, restaurant business. I mean, my heart goes out to
people like us.
Because it is, you have to socially distance, which means your occupation rates or the number of seats you can have in your restaurants drops.
Limited.
And then you have an alcohol ban, which means where you make your higher margins suddenly drops off. People are scared to leave their homes. So why would they come to a restaurant to sit and eat at your restaurant? So then you pivot, right? You have to find other means. So if you, for that peak, so for some businesses, suddenly they had the reserves, they built a delivery business, right? I mean, I saw recently that one of the restaurants is delivering past curfew hours, which means they've got, emergency permits for their drivers. And so that's suddenly you're unique, right? So if you suddenly feel after 8 o'clock, it's impossible for me to get a takeaway, but there's one restaurant that will, right? And suddenly, so I think that's where you need those.
It's difficult to do it without breaking the law, because they say everybody must be in their home by 7. So, but if you can get a waiver, all the best.
Or you plan your businesses differently, right? And to plan businesses differently sometimes needs money, right? It needs capital or it needs time. And so you got to plan yourself for these times, and to allow for your business to grow exponentially when it can, and for when business drops to be able to weather the storm and then continue again.
I normally want my guests to talk about how they overcame significant difficulties, so that people can learn from that. What did you say were the biggest challenges for your business, and how did you overcome them?
I think there have been various challenges we faced. One was in about 2009. One of our tenants' businesses was severely impacted in their revenue, and we had just built them a 40 million pula new building, right, with an expectation of rentals from it, right? And the terms that were used were white elephant, how we're going to use this real estate and the likes. And and so you understand it. It doesn't mean I've taken exactly. It's not that I have 40 million pula that I've taken from a friend and I can tell him I'll pay you in 2 years' time. No. I've taken this money from a bank, and the bank expects to get paid every month, right? And I have a reputation. I come from a family business. A 40-year family business. A reputation that we've built. We always pay properly. If anything, we pay in advance, right? We run our businesses.
They're reliable.
Exactly. And one mistake and you crush 40 years of your reputation, right? And so at that point, I think it was what we did is we really met face to face, understood each other's challenges, right? As I said,
face with the
user.
The user. Okay.
With the user. With the user. Because the creditor will be the last port of call for me.
Okay.
I want to ensure that
you're covered before you see them.
They've supported our business, and if we can find a way to ensure that we can repay, then I'd rather do that than go to them first.
Okay. So you met with the user,
understood their issues, understood how long it take for them to normalize, and used our rainy day surpluses, right? So we take this one that we only distribute less than 50% of our profits, right? We will never distribute more than that, because we keep that money coming back into the business to reduce debt levels, right? And to increase capital reserves. And we use those capital reserves. And actually what happens is in 2010, their business turned around.
Wow.
Right? And
took 2 years.
It took that, I think there was an impact from the 2007-2008 financial crisis.
Yeah.
So 2009 they had a tough time, and 2010 their business turned around, they managed it, and then we were able to get back on track.
So you stayed with them during the tough times?
Yes, exactly.
And worked things out.
We worked things out.
Okay.
We said we'd rather partner than fight, right?
Okay.
That's one. The other one I think we talked about a little bit is during this Corona time. About really, again, trying to not lose and increase vacancy. Even if we have to take a setback in cash flows. But in the long term, it helps, and it has. So for instance, all those people that we gave concessions to, they're still my tenants. And today, they continue to pay, and some of those units we have escalated, and they're paid.
Wow.
Right?
It's a good
because
story.
they know when they had their back against the wall, we were there to try and support them.
Yeah.
Obviously, we can't say no rent, right? So it was something that we explained to say, listen, these are our minimum costs that we have to manage.
Yeah.
So your rental has to be there.
Yeah.
on top of that is what pays for all these other additional things. So you wanted guarding, you wanted cleaning, you wanted all this. All right, we can't afford those things anymore. So let's cut back. Let's do only night guards.
Yeah.
Let's do cleaning not every day, but cleaning twice a week.
Yeah.
You know,
Even if it means adjusting the levies that they may be paying.
exactly. So
Yeah.
you adjust the services you provide to them,
Yeah.
but allow them to survive, and it allows you to survive.
Yeah. Excellent. That's
Yeah.
a wonderful piece of advice. Now let's address this last point. You're an entrepreneur. It's a full-time job. Accept it.
Yeah,
That message you want to make very clear that it's 100% commitment.
absolutely.
Talk about that.
When you're an entrepreneur, you don't have a day off, and you got to love it, right? Because your business doesn't stop working, right? So it may be Sunday, there may be a leak in a property. You can't say, "Oh, I'll deal with it on Monday. It's my day off." Then you're probably already paying 5,000 cooler and water bills. You're probably going to lose the tenant because they're upset they didn't get service, and you've lost your business, right? However, if you turn it on its head and say, as an entrepreneur, your time is more or so it is yours, right? So if you decide, I'm going to come and spend an hour with Mogobe, you can choose to do that. But if my business calls me, I will apologize to Mogobe and I'll go back, because I serve my business
So
benefits
obviously
me.
with large businesses like yours and mine, we have to have service providers or subcontractors
Exactly.
who are aware of this, and the challenge is inculcating it in them, or really
The
making
truth
them
is they're
understand.
entrepreneurs too, generally, right?
they
A
are.
lot of these contractors are running their own business,
Mm.
right? And my policy with these contractors is very simple, is that would you rather a one-off job where you get the business, make your money and leave, and we never deal again? Or would you rather have it that for the next 10 years, you and I are going to be working together, you and I have a good understanding, I have the confidence to pick my phone up and call you anytime, and I know it'll be done. And every month you're going to get paid. What would you prefer? And the answer from majority of them is simple, because we have a business. We'd like to
Yeah.
obviously have a good relationship with you.
They prefer predictability of income.
Exactly. And it's as simple as that for me. Is
So does that mean you are by and large avoiding full-time employees and opting to
no, not
to
necessarily.
rent out?
I think
Or there's a mix?
It is a mix, right? Because there's a certain commitment to somebody who is an employee of yours, right?
yeah.
A subcontractor can say, "I'm really sorry, sir, I'm stuck on another site,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But when you have a critical moment and you need that solved, if it's your own person, you can say, "Hold on to that job and go and do that," right? You have the flexibility to be able to instruct, right, and manage.
Yes.
So it's important, I think, to have a blend of both. I will always say there is a big room for outsourcing, because there are people who can do a role far more efficiently and cheaper than you can if you had somebody on board, unless your business is big enough to provide a scale where you can then provide that.
Yes.
Like many people have an in-house construction company, and the reason is they're consistently constructing, right? But many people said, "No, I don't want an in-house construction. I'd rather have a construction person who's my partner, right? Because and then we have a good relationship. He gives
Yeah.
me the best rates,
Yeah.
but he's a
And
construction
it's available for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And for your project.
Yeah. I think coming back to the point of you're an entrepreneur, love it, agree with it, is because you'll have those who will start a business and then they'll have a side hustle where they'll take employment somewhere. It's very difficult to scale and grow your business if your daily priority is something else, right? And you can't really call yourself a full-on
So
entrepreneur.
you encourage full-time total commitment.
You must commit to your business. I know it's difficult. It's difficult for many because, it's about day-to-day income,
Yeah.
right? But you've got to be able to choose when is the time. There's a company that we mentor. She used to work for a bank, right? And on the side had the business that she runs, and she was stationed in off station, and she was able to run it because it wasn't so busy in the office.
Yeah.
Then she got brought into head office here in Gabs, and she was busy, and the business didn't run.
Wow.
But the business had earned a reputation. It had, almost 400-500 regular customers. They were very upset with her,
Yeah.
right? And so she took the decision to leave her employment, which gave her a regular income, and to move into the business. That's when she became an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
That's when she decided to take the plunge into really. And now she has a business that may turn over $1 million or $2 million pula this year. You know, it's transformed.
There's a joke about the need for, the need for the worm or the caterpillar to turn into a butterfly.
Yeah.
You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, exactly.
It needs to suffer that change, to become a butterfly. So I don't know whether you like that analogy.
I think it's a great analogy, also because that's how life is, right? Is that, in the beginning your business really is worming around, right? It's and then suddenly there's a moment where you need to transform that business and make it this thing that's going to fly. So I think it's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
When you talk about a relationship between a business and an entrepreneur, another analogy I love, it's actually an analogy my mum taught me, is about a fruit tree. You start with a seed, the idea, right? And you plant that and you start watering and you put the effort. In the beginning you get no reward, right? You don't get any revenue, nothing. And then suddenly there'll be the first fruit will come. Now you have an option to take that first fruit and eat it yourself.
Yeah.
Or you have the option to take that first fruit and sell it so you can buy more stuff to put into the ground. Right? And that's what a business is.
Yeah.
So you keep putting stuff back into the business so that at some stage this small fruit tree will become a massive fruit tree. There is so much fruit that you can sell all the fruit and keep a little bit still for yourself. Right? Some wealth for yourself. And
Whereas if
it provides you shade.
If you had elected to eat it, that would have been it.
That's it. That's the end of the business. Then you have to wait for the next year.
No, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
This is a part of the show where you can ask me any question you please.
Oh, there is something I've been really meaning to ask you. It's about your podcast.
Yes.
Right? And how did it come about? Where's the root of the idea? And what would you love to see it do?
That's a good question. I think I've answered it previously. I had an idea to find entrepreneurs and to find difference makers or overcomers, people who have overcome, to come and share with the general public and to inspire others.
Yeah.
And this idea I put into effect 13 years ago through a show called Meet the Overcomers. The show is still running today in Duma FM.
Wow.
And I've trained and empowered a colleague by the name of Recton Majani, who's running it every Wednesday without fail at 6 o'clock on Duma FM. There's an overcomer sharing the story. But a time came when I felt that we need to just broaden our reach in terms of not only nationally but also internationally, in terms of showcasing these stars, people like yourself, these difference makers, these performers, people who really are kicking butt out there, people who are crushing it out there, so that the young entrepreneur who's out there, Motswana, in terms of our endeavor to change the culture, which is what the government is trying to do.
True.
The government says we have to move from public sector driven to
private sector
driven, and part of it is driving the spirit of entrepreneurship. And in my judgment, you can only do that through promoting entrepreneurs and through showing off rock stars, literally rock stars, people like you, who are out there making a difference, who can share their story, and that way keep inspiring the young entrepreneurs to come up. And also, in the interest of full disclosure, if I can be shameless about this, I'm also learning.
Absolutely.
Every time I have somebody like you, I'm actually personally learning
from
that.
So I listen to your podcast as well, because I want to learn. I want to learn from the speakers. I want to learn from the topics.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important.
That is
we are always learning.
Yes.
You never stop learning. My parents are well past their 60s and they're still learning.
Absolutely crucial.
And I think if you ever stop learning, you stop living. And
we have a tagline for it. We say we want to enthuse, want to energize, we want to inspire, and we want to empower.
Awesome.
All that is part of learning and giving back and getting. So that is the reason I started the podcast, and it's been a year now where I've been doing interviews, and the response has been very good. I think we have exceeded 2,000 subscribers. And the sky's the limit.
Well, if I can say one thing, is say thank you very much. As a young entrepreneur, I still consider myself a young entrepreneur. But thank you very much for the platform.
Yes.
And for me being able to share with you in your vision.
It was an honor.
And I think I'm so passionate about what you just talked about as well, and I'd love to see that. I'd love to see, you know, Botswana run, you know, effectively, efficiently, and creating great new things.
In that spirit, look at that camera, sir, and talk to that entrepreneur, and leave them 1 or 2 words of wisdom, one inspirational message, parting message, as it were.
Wow, on the spot. It's possible, right? I want to say it's possible. It's possible for great businesses to be developed by young entrepreneurs and even experienced professionals in Botswana. The market is there. Botswana is a great ground to perfect your product before taking it to the rest of Africa. And don't be scared of the continent. We are incredibly resilient people in Botswana. We have a great environment to learn and to, you know, prosper and bring our businesses up. And let's take it out there. Let's conquer the continent. And you know, Angel Network Botswana is there. People like Mogobe are there. And hopefully, you know, through mentorship, assistance, and your passion and your energy, we can make it happen. Thank you.
It was an honor and a privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been
this
my
is the time when you now share your contact details. If some of these people want to get in touch, want to learn from you,
Sure.
tell them.
So yeah, my name is Aditya Rajaram. My contacts are, you know, email is Aditya. It's ADITYA at acumen.co.bw. That's ADITYA at acumen.co.bw. And you know, if you do, best is to drop me an email. I love to work through email, and then I'm sure I can try and see how I can assist.
Social media?
Social media, yeah, I am on LinkedIn as Aditya Rajaram as well. So please do find me on LinkedIn. I have stayed away or pulled myself away from some of the others.
Like Facebook, yeah.
Like Facebook and Instagram, it takes a lot of my time. And it, you know, time value for me there made a lot of sense. I'd rather spend time with my children than on Facebook.
Thank you very much. You've been a great guest. Thank you very much.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.